Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today we'll talk about a really important topic about how to actually choose a good hybrid work model for you. What should be the hybrid work model for you? And how do you customize it to different departments and roles? So, why is this important? Why shouldn't you just have the same hybrid work model for everyone across all departments and roles? This is a serious issue. We do see a number of firms that use this broad brush top-down approach to hybrid work, which don't have differences for different departments, different roles. For example, Comcast mandates office days on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and remote only on Monday and Friday. Apple requires its staff to come in 3 days a week, so sort of similar model. This approach, top-down, standardized, several days, reflects a real reluctance by the leadership to adopt hybrid work and shows that it only did so because it would lose lots of talented staff if it didn't. Rather than having a really effective, customized approach based on what are the needs of different departments and different roles in each department for effective hybrid work to deliver the best outcomes. So, Apple's AI team had resigned due to a lack of flexibility as a result of its model. This is an example of how bad things get. You know how important AI is right now, and the head of AI resigning due to a lack of flexibility was a serious issue. So forced adoption is what you don't want to have. It undermines gains in productivity, retention, and cutting costs, which all come from effective hybrid work models. So if you want good retention, good productivity, if you want to cut costs, you want to make sure to optimize your hybrid work model rather than just standardize it for everyone with a top-down approach of the same several days. So, how do you think about this? Well, you want to understand what are the consequences of poor decisions. How do you convince leaders? How do you convince yourself, maybe? So, EY Work Reimagined Employer Survey showed that poor hybrid work planning harms company bottom lines and the economy more broadly. So that's what the research shows. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics showed that after the in-person return, after the widespread vaccination in Q1 2022, we saw a 7.5% drop in productivity, which was the largest since 1947. Next quarter saw also a substantial 4.6 decrease in productivity. So with the return to office, we saw major decreases in productivity. NBR study, National Bureau of Economic Research study, showed that productivity sharply increased in the first 2 years of the pandemic, especially in remote capable industries like IT and finance. But industries requiring more in-person work weren't so successful in increasing productivity. They fell behind. So, this really should show you the productivity impacts. The EY Reimagined survey shows the economic impacts. And what you want to do then is have a really good hybrid work framework that is customized to different roles and different departments. And here's how you approach this decision framework. You want to have two central questions. One, what work is best done remotely versus in the office? And two, what type of work is done in each department and role, related to which work is done best remotely versus in the office. So, looking at the first question, studies show that staff are fine working in the office overall. What they really don't like is the commute. It takes a lot of hours and costs many thousands of dollars in costs associated with commuting, like gas, car, wear and tear. They have to get expensive lunches in downtown restaurants. They have to dry clean their clothing, buy clothing. People don't enjoy the additional costs as well as the additional time. So, thinking about the task allocation, we talked about some of the problems with commuting. So how do you get people invested into commuting? Well, you make sure that tasks that are best done in the office are done in the office, and you don't have them do tasks that are best done at home in the office. So you want to allow remote work for individual focused work, asynchronous collaboration and communication, and video conferences and phone meetings. So individual, head down focused work is really best done at home. That's where people can focus on it, they're not distracted. That's very helpful. Asynchronous communication, collaboration like emails, Slack messages, team messages, you don't need to come to the office and do that. And video conferences and phone meetings, you don't need to distract others with your video conference calls or be distracted by them. So allow remote work for that. But in-office work is best for more intense synchronous collaboration, where you're having group meetings, collaborative activities. You want also thinking about challenging or nuanced conversations that are group conversations or one-on-one conversations. Maybe be one-on-one might be performance management. Group conversations might be conversations about ongoing strategy, so something like that, or nuanced can be challenging about group performance. Cultivating team belonging and company culture, so various social activities, intense collaboration, and then mentoring and on-the-job learning and leadership development. Especially in the early stages of mentoring, it's very valuable to be in person. Same thing with on-the-job learning and leadership development, especially in the earlier stages or when people go for a transition. So thinking about how that applies, that's the first question. What's best done in the office versus what's best done from home? And then thinking about different departments and roles. That's why you see that fixed office days are inefficient. They don't really align with the things that are best done remotely versus from home. Diverse roles demand diverse work locations. And if you don't have that, then you waste a lot of time and effort. So Stuart Templeton, the Slack UK head, says that commuting for video calls to the office is a terrible use of office time. It kills productivity and causes people to leave. Having an adaptive work schedule framework must involve factoring in the kind of work done by each department and roles in different departments. So thinking about accountants, the tasks of typical accountants who just look at your accounting, close the books and so on, they involve mostly solitary tasks with occasional asynchronous collaboration, not at the same time, most of the time. But at the end of each quarter, year, sometimes month, they involve more intense collaboration. So staff should come in rarely during those regular periods where they're mainly doing solitary tasks with occasional asynchronous collaboration, maybe coming once a week or something like that. But in the last week of the quarter, maybe the last 2 weeks of the year, or maybe the last couple of days of each month if they're closing the books of the month, but especially the quarter where they typically close the books and especially the end of the month, they should come in nearly every day for the last week, 2 weeks, however much it takes. Now, that doesn't involve, so we're talking about regular accountants, but there can be some specialized accountants. So for example, there can be auditors among accountants. They have different work patterns where they have intense collaboration during preparing and launching an audit, but then more individual focused work during findings analysis. And then finally, at the end of an audit, they have more challenging conversations. So that, of course, involves distinct office schedules. So you don't have this whole accounting department having the same office schedule. So that's the difference between department versus role in each department. Let's talk about another example for sales teams. So I worked with a B2B IT service provider, and we talked about what was going to work best for their sales team. And the sales team decided that on 3 days a week in the office would be best because they're making a lot of outbound phone calls and having some inbound phone calls, but many outbound phone calls. And then they do 2 remote days for individual work. So you have experienced salespeople sitting together with junior staff, and that gives junior staff a lot of tips and tricks during live calls that they overhear. So senior staff can also provide quick feedback on calls made by new hires, and it helps everyone celebrate mutual wins, especially helping senior staff celebrate wins by junior staff, which helps motivate the junior staff. Let's talk about another case study of a Fortune 500 firm. It's a consumer products manufacturing company with which I worked, and we talked specifically looking at the HR function. And we had the HR adopt a role-specific approach. So again, the HR department, and within each, there are different HR roles. So back-end HR worked remotely. That was the best fit. They were able to find a lot of good staff across the United States who were working remotely, also in other locations around the world, mostly the US, who were working remotely. And they gathered once a week to socialize if they were working close enough to the office to do so. If they weren't, they gathered together once a quarter during the quarterly meeting. Now, training staff, HR staff, they visited the office only for in-person training. They didn't need to do that. Otherwise, they also visited for the quarterly events. The recruiters worked full-time remotely. Again, that was a great way of cutting costs. And they didn't visit once a week, they just visited for those annual events. But the HR partners for the businesses, so HR partners, business partners who work directly with each business unit, they adopted schedules that reflected the departments they supported. So again, different schedules for different roles in each department. So thinking about that tailoring, the hybrid work. So those are some specific case studies. Let's go to the general principle. So you want to have the tailoring involve leadership setting guidelines and of course budget priorities. So some of my clients ended up closing subsidiary offices and they limited office visits to main campus only for crucial events because they would be overwhelmed with people coming in otherwise. Others hired fully remote staff in lower cost areas to save on commuting costs, especially, for example, the full-time remote recruiters. That was for the Fortune 500 company, the consumer goods product company that I mentioned before, for roles that didn't really need intense collaboration needs, which recruiters didn't. So you want to empower, what about departments? So you want to work with departments to empower them to craft their own hybrid work plans. Middle managers who are leading teams need to be educated on what tasks are best done at home versus in the office. And you want to focus on the need to minimize the burdens of commuting, to have retention, productivity, and cutting costs benefits. So have each department develop an initial plan involving both staff and leaders to get buy-in from everyone. Staff is going to be really important. Getting employees engaged in hybrid decision-making is crucial. So there's a Gallup survey on staff in hybrid settings. It shows engagement at 46% if you have team-driven office decisions, 41%, 5% less, if individuals make their own decisions, and if it's leadership-driven, it's 6% less than individual decision-making and 11% less than team-driven decision-making. So that's why you really want to decentralize decision-making to the team level. And that's where you'll get the best benefit. So have an agile approach. Treat the initial plan as a draft, not final. You want to experiment, measure the success for a few months. And after the 3 months or so, that's kind of the typical recommendation I would make, reassess departments, see how they're working out, update the plans based on results. And so this is the kind of customized framework that combines departmental coordination with staff buy-in. That's what helps you gain the best balance of productivity, retention, and cost cutting. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show and it helps us improve the show.